So, welcome to this assembly, and we're focusing here on issues around behaviour. Since the pandemic and the return to school, some of the schools that we've been working with have been reporting an upswing in meanness, nastiness, hatred online and in person, people behaving effectively appallingly. So, this assembly is called Your Behaviour is Your Communication, hashtag delete the hate. And in it, we're going to explore what's actually going on in the heads of people that are behaving so appallingly. People that are writing horrible comments online, dishing out hatred and responding in an aggressive and nasty way. So, the idea is if we can change your understanding of your brain, we as a community will be able to support you change your words and change our world and yours. Everything we do as human beings is generated by our brain, and we've really got basic choices about our response in a community situation. We can respond pro-socially, positively, supportively, kindly, helping people, or we can respond in an antisocial way, dividing people up by a whole range of differences, spouting nasty comments and responding in a very unhelpful and nasty way to people. So we've got pro-social and antisocial responses available. Let's look at what's going on in people's brains when that happens. So who are we to be talking about all of this? My name's Andrew and I work at a company called Action Your Potential, and our mission is to help everyone understand their incredible brains. Both us as a community suffering some of the negative responses from a small minority of people in our school communities, but also you, the people that are dishing out this nastiness, this hatred. We want you to understand yourselves so you can change, because your antisocial behaviour not only damages the community, not only hurts and upsets and causes harm to members of the community, but also damages you and your chances. Your behaviour is your communication. Your behaviour is your reputation. It's like the calling card that you stick out into the world. So do follow us on social media. We're here for everyone who wants to understand their brain. And if you're listening to this as an angry, antisocial person full of rage and nastiness, do get in touch. We're absolutely happy to support you in a compassionate and empathetic way to change your antisocial ways. We work with children, students, parents, individuals, business leaders. Basically, we want everyone to stop living in their brain by accident and work with the grain of the brain and live in a mind designed each day with daily behaviours that transform. And we're going to look at some of those behaviours in this assembly. So we're going to focus on a really powerful and articulate question from a very inspiring black student that I met in one of the schools that we support. And their question was, because we were talking about this whole issue of the kind of increase in hatred since the pandemic, the increase in online nastiness and negativity and antisocial behaviour, and actually drifting towards kind of criminal behaviour if you're abusing people online. And the question they asked was, why? They just couldn't understand. Why do they say that? They don't even know me. Why do they hate me? Why do they want to cause me pain? They don't even know me. And I think that's a good place to start this assembly. But if you're listening to this, you know it isn't just black or Asian or Latino or Chinese students who face this issue, this hatred, this nastiness, this desire to denigrate and be horrible online or in person. It's women, it's people with disabilities, it's people from the LGBTQ community. It's any of us, basically, any of us who are different, who dare to be different, who dare just to express ourselves in particular ways. Any of us can become victims of this nastiness and hatred. So We started with those questions, so let's try and answer those passionate, inspiring questions. Those questions that are derived from confusion from that student. Why do they say that? If you're listening to this as a student that is a racist, a student that is homophobe, a student that is mean and nasty and dishes out hate, why do you say that? We're going to answer that question now. The answer comes from neuroscience and psychology and the study of human behaviour. Every behaviour that we send out into the world is a communication about what's going on inside our brains. So what we need to know first of all is the brain builds the mind. That feeling of grogginess you have first thing in the morning, that's called sleep inertia. That is the brain building that day's mind. What is the mind? It's the way the brain communicates with itself. Now, if our brain isn't in a great space, particularly if our brain is experiencing lots of difficulties itself, if our brain is not acknowledging its emotional experiences, the mind we get to live inside is not a very pleasant place. Our brains respond first to the world with emotions. So our reactions and responses are emotional first. And if we're suffering lots of nastiness and meanness towards us, we might decide that one way to deal with that is to dish it straight back out. We might become sort of angry and sad. We'll look at some of that stuff shortly. Unless we learn to manage our emotions, we can become stuck in deep emotional pain. And that acts like a toxin for our attitudes about the world and other people. If we are suffering from emotional pain, if we've got difficult relationships at home, if we've experienced some trauma, rather than process that emotion, rather than reach out and seek support, we can turn on ourselves and we can develop a very poor relationship with ourselves, and we can carry a sack of emotional pain around inside us. Why is that important? Well, emotional pain is registered in the middle of the brain in an area called the anterior cingulate cortex, sandwiched between the cognitive processing part of the brain and the emotional part of the brain. So if you are suffering from a large amount of emotional pain, there are lots of ways that that can affect your behaviour. But one particular way, if you don't acknowledge that pain, if you try and distract yourself from that pain, you could head off to addictions with distraction. You can get addicted to your phone or social media, but you end up in a situation where acknowledging that pain means there's a lot of emotional energy locked up in your brain, which will affect your response. So social pain and physical pain are registered in the same part of the brain, this middle bit of the brain here. That is where neurons activate when you experience physical pain, but that's also where neurons activate where you experience bullying and nastiness and verbal abuse. And maybe some of those people that are responding in an antisocial way, not all by any means, but some of those people have suffered abuse themselves in the past, verbal abuse, bullying, difficult relationships, and have ended up carrying a whole load of emotional pain. Emotional pain impacts on thinking. It means that we will struggle to think clearly. We will react rather than respond. We will say things on the spur of the moment that perhaps soon afterwards we might regret. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me is not true. Emotional pain is as upsetting and dangerous for the body as physical pain. And abuse, antisocial behaviour, has a physical impact on the brain. The way that our brains process emotion is the top bit of the brain, the cognitive part of the brain, needs to enable the emotional part of the brain to express those emotions that it's feeling. So ideally, we should be naming our emotional experiences. I'm angry because this happened. I'm sad because this happened. And we need to develop these three skills that the schools that work with us are teaching every day and every week to both students, parents and staff. Emotional agility, the ability to be aware of our emotions. Emotional granularity, the ability to name our emotions. And emotional hygiene, the ability to name our emotions. So what happens if we don't manage our most painful emotional experiences? Well, we can bottle those emotions in, and this is where we head into a territory for some people where they bottle their emotions, they curdle inside them and they become antisocial, nasty, angry, and hateful people. Or we can brood on our emotions. So we identify the emotion that we're having, and then we're kind of getting stuck in that space. We're running a bath of sadness, say, getting in the bath and ladling sadness over our head. Bottling and brooding isn't a healthy response to the brain in terms of emotions. So, this question from the student: why do they hate me? Why do they want to cause me pain? Why do they actually dish out that hatred? They don't hate you. They don't understand themselves. They're confused. Their relationship with themselves is really poor. In fact, our relationship with ourselves is the founding relationship in our lives. If we don't like ourselves very much, if we haven't connected with ourselves, if we haven't understood ourselves, if we're feeling weak, small, and inside and cowardly inside, we will possibly head in a direction of dishing out nastiness and antisocial behaviour to other people. People who write hate, speak hate, bile and anger are not mentally well. They are mentally unwell. They are unbalanced. Antisocial behaviour is an unbalanced behaviour. It's sending a message out into the world to all of us that that person isn't balanced. That person isn't processing their emotion. That person may be suffering difficult experiences themselves. They may be experiencing hatred or bullying themselves. And the only way they can respond to it is to lash out at other people. People that are struggling with difficult emotions can send those emotions out into the world in a very energetic, antisocial way. People that are in that space are unstable, they're carrying emotional pain, or they've experienced bullying or an abusive relationship when they were young. They are not in that pro-social space. Healthy minds are pro-social. Humans are kind by default. Unhealthy minds are antisocial, or can be antisocial. Some unhealthy minds can be antisocial. In short, these people that are behaving the way they are never learnt to manage their emotions or to love themselves for whatever reason, and we should reach out ultimately to them with compassion and kindness in a way that helps them develop and respond more positively to their emotions, and to find a form of redemption through connecting with other people. But obviously, if we do that, we need to make sure we're doing that in a way that doesn't put us at risk. These people have stewed themselves in their unprocessed emotional pain. They've become quite literally sick in their thinking as a way of responding to the world and other people. How did that happen? It happened like this. If you experience primary emotions, bold, strong emotions like anger or sadness, for example, in response to an event, but for whatever reason you're not able to express that emotion, it can curdle inside you. To secondary emotions, they're much more complicated, and that may be how we relate to the primary emotion, and they're often learnt, those secondary emotions, through our upbringing or our culture. So a primary emotion might be fear or sadness, but because we're not allowed to express fear, because we're told that big boys don't cry and we're not meant to be scared, we're meant to be tough, we may not express our fear, we may not express our sadness. So that sadness and fear curdles to anger and hate. To express those emotions in some fashion, fear and sadness curdle to anger and hatred, to get rid of that emotion in a nasty, antisocial way, to pour it out into the world because that person is suffering themselves. They wear their hate and rage as a badge that they're carrying deep, unprocessed emotional wounds, that perhaps they've suffered an abusive relationship or been badly bullied or neglected by people who should have cared for them. How does that happen? Well, imagine a situation where a small, terrified boy is told by a parent that big boys don't cry. Sort yourself out. Don't cry. Big boys don't cry. So sadness is not an allowable emotion. So that sadness remains inside and curdles to anger and rage and hate. Just a small, simple response like that, repeated over and over, can lead to a denial of fear and sadness and its transformation into hate. Or think of a terrified girl hit by her parents when she makes some mistakes. She reacts to this relationship by transmuting that fear from home into anger and manipulation in school to feel powerful. Because she feels small and scared and powerless at home, she transmutes that fear into feeling powerful in school. So, what can we do as a community about those who spout hate and bile online or in life? We can stand up and we can say, your behaviour is your communication. We see you, we see you, we see your nasty, hate-filled behaviour. We see your pain, the emotional pain you're carrying. We see you're out of balance. We see you need help. Do you get help? We see you. Wake up. Get help to stop your hate. Feel to heal. What we know is you can change your brain through daily behaviours that work with the neural plasticity of your brain. You can change your brain. So if you're carrying emotional pain, if you're dishing out nastiness and hatefulness, if your relationship with yourself is so poor that you want to behave in such an antisocial way, reach out, seek change. You can change. We see that you need help. Your behaviour is your communication. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, everyone. Hi, that was quite an intense video actually, wasn't it? There's a lot to take in there, and it might have stirred up some stuff for you. My name's Andrew and I work at Action Your Potential. There was a lot in there about, maybe you've suffered from bullying or abuse, you're struggling with your emotions. Remember, humans are naturally pro-social, and if you're struggling to kind of feel connected to people, if you find it really hard to reach out, if you feel very, very strong feelings of anger and hatred, then you may be suffering from some of the stuff that we talked about in that video. And if you are, the next few slides hopefully will give you a bit of information in terms of how to support yourselves. Thanks for listening, and do get in touch if you need any support. So your behaviour is your communication assembly. It may have inspired in you a set of strong emotions, and if you feel, having listened to all of that, that you wanted to get some more help, reach out to help change your behaviour, so you're not responding in such a dreadful way to people, and you're getting some support and help to move your emotional space forward in a positive way. Do approach your tutor, your head of year, a school teacher that you feel able to talk to, your school safeguarding lead, or you can contact us on actionyourpotential@gmail.com. We'll listen supportively and signpost you on to the people and services who might be able to help you. There is help available. You don't need to carry that pain anymore. You don't need to dish out that anger and hate anymore. You live in a neurally plastic brain. You can change. So your behaviour is your communication. Reach out, change your mind, words, and change your world. And there's some great organisations out there if you don't feel able to approach someone physically. Young Minds has got a fantastic website, and you can contact people via Young Minds. And also locally, iRock has got a web page. Sussex Health Partnerships have got a web page you can go to and make contact with people that might be able to help you there. Thank you for listening.